It's always a pleasure to have our buddy Chip Roy with us. Chip Roy, how are you, sir?
Mark, I'm doing great, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I need you to help be a messenger for me and my audience a little bit. Before you say yes, I want you to hear me out.
Yeah.
Joe Biden has committed unequivocally impeachable offenses when it comes to the border. He's violated his oath of office. He's violated the Take Care Clause of the Constitution. It's as bright as day. You don't need hearings. You don't need depositions. You don't need subpoenas. Joe Biden has violated separation of powers. He has seized the power of the purse from the House of Representatives by forgiving $500 billion in student loans from the Treasury. Even the Supreme Court said he didn't have the power to do that under separation of powers, but he went around the court and around Congress and did it. And number three, Joe Biden is literally funding our enemy in Iran. He's the commander-in-chief. And he put waivers on all those sanctions that Trump had in place, the biggest of all, involving oil. He rearmed Iran, which rearmed Hamas, the Houthis. They are attacking American soldiers. He's not doing anything about it. We've never had a president in American history who armed our enemy. So I understand all the laptop stuff and the accounts and the wash-through, but I challenge members of Congress. You go home and you ask people, who is Devin Archer? People don't know who Devin Archer is. You go home and you ask people, what do you think about what's going on the border? What do you think about that student loan forgiveness? What do you think about us funding Iran? They will understand that. Those are impeachable offenses. That is a high crime under 17th and 18th century English common law. So I'm asking you, my brother, why aren't we prioritizing this in a way that we will actually be able to effectively achieve the goal, which is to impeach a man who has violated multiple parts of the Constitution, and the American people understand it and support it? What do you say to that?
Well, Mark, first of all, I couldn't agree more. And I think the answer to your question, unfortunately, is that there are a number of my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle who take a view of high crimes and misdemeanors that you and I would disagree with. They take a narrow view of it rather than understanding that when a president or, for example, his secretaries, like Secretary Mayorkas, who violate their oath of the Constitution, who, as you said, do not follow the Take Care Clause of the Constitution to take care of the laws faithfully executed, who do all the things you just described, who endanger the American people, that all of these things are, in fact, as the framers intended, high crimes and misdemeanors. We have at least, I don't know what the number is, probably up to 10, certainly a handful of members who have stipulated that they don't believe those are high crimes and misdemeanors. They say, oh, you have to committed a crime and so forth. The history does not bear that out. Some of my colleagues say, oh, that's maladministration, Chip. That's not, one, that is not maladministration. They are blatantly ignoring their duty. They're purposely doing it. They're endangering the American people. The President of the United States is doing that intentionally. Wide open borders, fentanyl pouring in, killing our kids. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're funding our enemies in Hamas. They're funding Iran. These are all things you and I know. But they say, oh, no, but Chip, that's not actually, that's just maladministration. You just don't like what he's doing. No, he's not following his oath. So I'm with you. Because of that, we are, of course, trying to make the case, which I think we can, of the rampant corruption that we're dealing with respect to Hunter Biden. But I'm with you. I think these are impeachable offenses. I think they're nakedly impeachable offenses. And if we don't start doing that, we're just giving our country away, hiding behind these hyper-technical, wrong-headed definitions of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Maladministration, we know that was suggested and shot down at the Constitutional Convention. How is maladministration the intentional violation of every single effective immigration law, the consequences being death, rapes, selling children into slavery, the overwhelming of our cities and towns? That's not maladministration. That is a high crime. If that's not a high crime, there's no such thing as a high crime. That's number one. Every president who's been impeached in the past was not impeached for a financial offense. They were impeached because they didn't uphold their oath. Now, you cannot seize the power of the purse from the House of Representatives and give away $500 billion without any authority whatsoever and call that maladministration. That's an intentional violation of the Constitution. You cannot be funding our enemy by lifting sanctions, by giving them waivers, which they're now using the money to attack American soldiers, and call that maladministration. That is insane. So are there not at least enough chairmen who are now looking at this? What about Jordan? What about Comer? What about the other guy? I can't remember him over there at the tax committee. He can't, but the impeachment resolution that I read, and you can correct me, Chip, if I'm wrong, but I read it, is broad enough where you can bring up other issues. So I'm not saying it should exclude, obviously, selling the vice president's office, which he did. I'm talking about these other issues that have a direct impact on society and the people of this country. Can't they at least begin inquiries into that, too? Because I'm not seeing it.
The reason this is so critically important, and what's interesting, your listeners should know, you and I haven't talked about this. We haven't pre-gamed this out, but I could not agree with you more. And it's important and it's critical because it goes to the core of what's happening to our country, that we're losing our country by the second, by virtue of the complete punt by the Congress of our powers to the executive branch, sitting back and just letting him roll right over the Constitution, blatantly disregarding our Article I powers, using the Article II powers completely inappropriately. The student loan process is a perfectly good example.
We're here with our buddy Chip Roy. You know, Chip, I know you understand this, but the whole idea of separation of powers is that each of the three branches would jealously guard their own authority. Now, the Democrats have gotten around that because they don't care about separation of powers of the Constitution, so they're happy to throw in with a radical court or a radical president, violate separation of powers, and do all that stuff. But it is absolutely unacceptable that Republicans throw in with a Democrat who is destroying the country by violating our immigration laws, who is destroying the country by spending like a drunken Marxist, including this student loan fiasco, and who is arming the enemy of the United States that is attempting to kill American soldiers in that theater over there. If they don't stand up to Joe Biden, then there's nothing that can, right?
No, Mark, you're exactly right. I mean, and let's go through a couple of them. You talked about some of the key ones, right? But we're talking about the border, where they're blatantly misusing the parole powers and asylum powers, which are supposed to be exceptions, to leave our border wide open and exposed, killing Americans. They're using the blatant abuse of power to allow student loan forgiveness under emergency powers, a blatant abuse of power. Abortion tourism, the Department of Defense, blatant disregard of the text of the law. How about all of their energy policies? Solar panel mandates using the Defense Production Act, a blatant abuse of power. Mandates now for electric vehicle mandates by 2032, two-thirds of the American fleet, driving up the cost of every American's cars, driving up inflation, making us more dependent on China, all using abuse of power. And the problem is our Republican colleagues are not standing up and fighting. We continue to fund this government, fund this president. We refuse to use the impeachment power to strip the president of this abuse of power. And it's a mistake. Just today, we yet again allowed a major bill to move off the floor, sent to the president with a more Democratic votes than Republican votes off of the floor of the House, with the National Defense Authorization Act, with a FISA extension to continue to allow the abuse of FISA authority without checking it, reforming it. We did the same thing with the continuing resolution in December, a continuing resolution in October, the so-called Fiscal Responsibility Act last May. All had more Democrat votes than Republican votes. We are not holding this administration accountable. That needs to change. I hope Speaker Johnson, coming into the new year, will realize we need to use our powers to check Biden to take our country back.
The problem you have in the Republicans in the House, let's be honest, you live and work there, you don't have a functioning majority. That's your problem. You simply don't. The party is too divided. You've got majority of rhinos. You've got a significant number of members from the base, but it's not a governing majority. And so that's why primaries are important. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly right, Mark. We don't, but we're trying to work on it. I mean, I will say this, and you and I agreed on this. We were trying to work through last year. We did a lot of great things. We got a good border bill done. We got a good national defense bill done because we were working the system. We were working with Kevin to get it done. I disagreed with the motion to vacate in September. Now we've got Mike. He's a good man. But now we're dealing with the normal powers that be coming in and saying, hey, we know how to do this. We'll get this done. And now it's this uniparty in Washington who are trying to call the shots. We need conservatives to stand up, work with Mike, and we need to advance an agenda early this year to hold spending in check. We need to hold the president accountable. You're right, Jim and Jamie and all of us, we need to hold Biden accountable, not just with these laptops and Hunter Biden stuff. I mean, it's all there. It's bad. It's corruption. We need to pursue it. We know that they're up to their neck in corruption, and the money's flowing into the Biden family. We can pursue that. But you're right. It's bigger than that. It's an abuse of power. We need to pursue that, cut spending, force them to secure the damn border, and then get busy doing what we can do to get Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump elected president next year.
It's interesting you bring that up. I didn't think much of it. Nikki Haley, I didn't know much about her. She's governor of South Carolina. Okay, great. She was pretty good UN ambassador, but they pretty much just give speeches. And then she turns on DeSantis and the Republican legislature that's duking it out with Disney and says, they can come here. Then you start, and that's what turned me on her. And then you start to look at her record. She's taken 5 positions on every subject. When it comes to China, she was slobbering all over Xi. She wrote a love letter to Xi. She's giving them land in South Carolina. And then she claims she's tough on them. Even most recently, war breaks out with Hamas, and she's talking about we should allow Palestinians to immigrate to the United States. Are we out of our minds? And now she's backed by all these billionaire uniparty types, Democrats, who want to use her to go after Trump. And I'm going, and now the Republicans, the establishment in Washington, is now circling the wagons. Koch is throwing in. They're all throwing in behind Nikki Haley. Am I missing something?
Not at all. And we just saw her just last week, talking about how, we don't want to have, the government getting involved with these, transgender surgeries or whatever. It's like, were you kidding me? We got child mutilation going on and we shouldn't be involved in protecting children. I mean, look, you talked about the Palestinians, you talked about the Chinese deals, the land deals, and then trying to get Disney to South Carolina. It's absurd. And yes, the establishment circling the wagons because they like to do that. They want their safe places. But here's what's really important. Donald Trump, we know what he'll do. He comes to D.C., he takes on the establishment, and they bit back. Governor DeSantis, we know what he'll do, what he did in Florida. I support Governor DeSantis. I would support either of them. Governor DeSantis is my first choice. Here's what you need to know about Governor DeSantis out to your listeners. He told establishment donors to pound sand. They were saying, we're going to give you a lot of money to a super PAC this last spring if you will back away from abortion in Florida. He told them to pound sand because he's a man of character and conviction, and he's the governor of Florida, and he said, we're going to stand for life. That's the kind of people we want in Washington and the White House. That's why I support Governor DeSantis. That's why I think it's a mistake for the people to get fooled by this, latest rush to Governor Haley. I think I think it'll fizzle.
But boy, this is their big stand. The Wall Street Journal editorial page, the Peggy Noonan types, the Karl Rove type, the usual characters, the Bushies and the Ford types that actually really never supported Reagan. Even Peggy Noonan was a writer with Dan Rather. She came on board late, but you wouldn't know it if you listened to her. It's really amazing. And you might recall, while we're talking about this, Chip Roy, a couple of decades ago, the Wall Street Journal wrote an editorial, and they had a proposal that we amend our Constitution, and they said 5 words. You remember this? The borders shall be open. Did you know that?
Yep, I do remember that.
The borders...
The Wall Street Journal...
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. The Wall Street Journal and the Chamber of Commerce crowd for 2 decades, they wanted us to have open borders in pursuit of cheap labor, ignoring the extent to which in this world that's closing in, where we would be endangered. And exactly what is happening now with cartels, China, wide open borders, and the abuse of our borders, now we're suffering the consequences of that because that crowd wanted to be able to push for cheap labor. And instead, they're killing the Americans, killing American jobs, destroying our schools, destroying our hospitals, making us unsecure, attracting terrorists, making it to where FARC and other terrorists can come across our borders, fentanyl pouring in and killing our kids, all because they wanted to sort of, oh, we'll feel good, aren't we? We're the open, welcoming society. Yes, if you follow our laws, if you come here to become American, if you learn English, if you figure out how to, learn our values, Western civilization values, instead of allowing all sorts of folks to come here and change what we've done that has led the world. Without America, we don't have a world that is growing and is spreading the great blessings of prosperity that we've done through the sacrifices of the people who bled and died for this country. And yet we're just turning it over. I mean, Mark, 10,600 people came across the border and got encountered yesterday, 12,000 last Tuesday.
I know. Let me ask you a question. It's kind of a personal question. I'm going to ask you on the air. It's the holiday. Do you remember the first time we met or spoke? I'm trying to remember. Do you remember?
Oh, man. I think what it was when I was working for Governor Perry and was getting ready to write a book for Governor Perry, or with him, I should say, and I wanted your advice. And I got a mutual friend connected us, and you were kind enough. I'd worked in conservative politics. You were kind enough to connect me and give me advice about what to do and how to write it. And then we built our friendship then when I went to
Then we hit it off.
And from then, yep.
And I want the audience to know you went through life-threatening cancer, and you beat it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Lord willing, I'm knocking on wood over here, was blessed to go to MD Anderson. A little side note on that. I went to MD Anderson. I was able to get care. Today, as a member of Congress, I would be on Obamacare. And as one of my constituents who's fighting cancer right now, she's a wonderful woman. I just spent Thanksgiving weekend with her. She is now unable to go to MD Anderson because she's on Obamacare, like I would be on as a member of Congress. She can't go to MD Anderson because, quote, even though she's covered, they're not a part of the network. What the hell kind of coverage is that? That's what these liberals have done. And so, I, as a cancer survivor, believe very much in having the opportunity to go get the kind of care I was able to get at MD Anderson, the great cancer hospital. And we've messed up our friggin' healthcare system so bad that someone I love and care about, one of my constituents, she's a dear friend now. I've met her since I ran for office. She can't go there. And we're trying to get her treatment and help. We're trying to support her. But it just makes me so mad what we've done to the hardworking middle class in this country who can't afford cars, can't afford houses, can't afford health care, can't send their kids to a school where they won't be indoctrinated, can't trust their government to secure their borders, can't trust their government not to bankrupt, our country with spending with money we don't have. And it's just killing me. And I'm sitting in Congress going, why the hell are we here? We're letting Democrats run the show.
It's also amazing if you dare to question Obamacare and say, I'll replace with something better, which is what Governor DeSantis has said. Oh, you want to take health care away from people. It's amazing the way the media twist all this stuff, isn't it?
No, because what we want to do is provide a place where you can get health care instead of having basically insurance-run, insurance-managed, government-regulated health coverage that doesn't allow you to go to the doctor of your choice. I was just talking to some entrepreneurs in Austin today about what they're doing to drive down the price of care with direct primary care, go to the doctor of your choice, with insurance products that allow you to share across not just like health sharing ministries that are church funded. This is actually a market driven deal where you can have health accounts and share across that and go into the market and buy health and health care, and it drives the prices down. Our government doesn't want you to have that choice. Our government wants to control your life. They want to control your speech. They want to control everything about how we live. And you know what? We're going to win. I'm sounding a little negative about my frustration in Washington. We're going to win, Mark, because of people like Riley Gaines, who stood up and said, you know what, I am a girl and I want to swim against girls. Or Chloe Cole, who stood up, I was forced to be detransitioned or to be transitioned, and I'm trying to transition back to being a woman because I don't buy into all that nonsense. And she stood up and testified. Or Scott Smith out in Loudoun County. You're very familiar with that because you know that area well. Scott Smith stood up to the bureaucrats and the prosecutor, the Commonwealth's attorney there. People like that are going to save our country. People like Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, people like in the Freedom Caucus, handful of conservatives in the Senate. No one should lose heart, especially this time of year in the holiday season.
All right, brother.
Whether you're Jewish during Hanukkah or celebrating the birth of Christ, we're going to take this country back because of the greatness of this country and the people in it.
And men like you. God bless you. And have a wonderful Christmas. Best to your family, too.
God bless you, my friend. Love you guys. Take care.
Love you, too. Take care of yourself. Good man.